The night sky above Manhattan glitters like a film premiere, and at its center stands Robert De Niro's penthouse, a monument of glass and legend. Reporters say the place cost more than most movie budgets, its windows reflecting a lifetime of triumphs. Inside, golden awards line the walls like silent witnesses, each one whispering the same story. The boy from Little Italy who became the godfather of American cinema. But tonight, the silence feels heavier than applause. A soft jazz record plays, and De Niro sits alone by the window, staring at the city he once ruled. His face, weathered yet defiant, carries the kind of power that built empires. The phone on the table vibrates. Another alert, another headline. Court orders De Niro to pay millions. Family rift deepens. He exhales, the kind of sigh that belongs to a man who's fought every war, but never expected one like this. The camera flashes outside never stop. Paparazzi still wait for a glimpse of the legend, shouting his name like a spell that used to open doors. But tonight, their calls echo unanswered. The champagne sparkle of fame has gone flat. On the big screen, De Niro's characters always faced betrayal with a clenched jaw and a loaded stare. In real life, there's no script, just the slow unraveling of a man who gave everything to the camera, and now finds himself watched for all the wrong reasons. Behind those walls are trophies, scripts, and memories of the roles that defined him. Travis Bickle, Jake LaMotta, Vito Corleone, each one a mirror, each one a mask. And now the world is asking, which was the real De Niro? The fearless icon, or the fragile human who outlived his own myth? A thunderstorm brews beyond the skyline, flashes of lightning slicing across the city like camera bulbs gone mad. In that flicker of chaos, he looks almost cinematic again, an aging warrior framed by luxury and loneliness. He picks up a framed photo of his younger self, the smile confident, the eyes hungry. For a moment, his hand trembles. Then he sets it down gently, as if releasing a secret. The rain begins to fall against the glass, washing the city clean. But for Robert De Niro, the storm is just beginning. Because behind those million-dollar smiles, something darker is brewing. Long before the mansions and the headlines, there was just a boy named Bobby, wandering the narrow streets of Little Italy with a notebook in his pocket and a dream too big for his neighborhood. His father was a painter, his mother an actress who never quite caught her break. Both artists, both believers in impossible beauty. Their small apartment smelled of paint, pasta, and perseverance. Money was scarce, but imagination was everywhere. Bobby grew up watching people, their walks, their tempers, their quiet heartbreaks. While other kids played stickball, he studied faces, learning the language of emotion long before he learned the language of fame. In school, he was shy, almost invisible. But inside him burned a restlessness that refused to stay silent. At 16, he found his calling. A community theater production needed an extra, and Bobby volunteered. Under those dim stage lights, he felt something electric. The freedom to be anyone, the permission to feel everything. He wasn't just pretending, he was becoming. That night, he walked home through the city's flickering streets, knowing life would never be ordinary again. Years of rejection followed, casting rooms where directors barely looked up. jobs that paid in compliments instead of cash. He waited tables, painted walls, slept on friends' couches, but never stopped showing up. His mother's voice echoed in his head. "Keep trying, Bobby. One day, someone will see what I see." That day came when he met Martin Scorsese. Two restless New Yorkers, both obsessed with truth, both hungry to shatter Hollywood's polished lies. Together they created Lightning, Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull. Each role carved De Niro's name deeper into cinema's soul. He wasn't just acting, he was exposing something raw in every character, every stare. Suddenly, the boy from the Bronx was standing on the world's biggest stages, accepting Oscars in a tuxedo that still felt borrowed. Cameras flashed, critics bowed, and his name became legend. America loved his grit, his defiance. The immigrant son who conquered an industry built to overlook men like him. And yet, behind every applause came a whisper. Success demands sacrifice, and fame always wants more. He gave it everything: his time, his privacy, his peace. The city that once ignored him now followed his every move. The fairy tale was real. The dream had come true. But every rise has its price. For decades, Robert De Niro's life shimmered like a scene from one of his own films, part legend, part fantasy. The world saw him stepping out of black cars and into golden light, red carpets rolling like silk rivers beneath his polished shoes. In Cannes, Rome, and New York, his name meant power. Cameras didn't just follow him, they worshipped him. Each flash seemed to crown him again, the king of cinema, untouchable and timeless. Inside his Manhattan penthouse, art hung on every wall, Picasso beside Pollock, memories frozen in color. Private chefs prepared midnight meals for guests whose names filled magazine covers. Flights weren't booked, they were arranged. One call, and a private jet waited at Teterboro, champagne already chilled, destination, wherever the world demanded him next. The headlines glowed like trophies. De Niro reigns supreme at Tribeca Gala. Hollywood's living legend inspires a new generation. Fans posted photos from decades of devotion. Still the GOAT. One tweet read, under an old film still of Travis Bickle, his gun aimed at destiny. In every corner of the internet, admiration poured like wine. But behind the filters of perfection, there were quiet moments when the noise faded. At crowded premieres, his smile lingered a second too long, eyes searching for something past the lights. Friends noticed he'd leave parties early, retreating from the laughter he once commanded. Fame had become routine, a performance without applause. There were whispers, rumors about temper, exhaustion, family strain. Tabloids began circling not just his career, but his personal life. De Niro snaps at staff, one headline claimed. Trouble at home, another teased. For every glowing article, there was a shadow creeping beneath it. He'd walk through luxury hotels lined with marble and mirrors, yet every reflection seemed to age him faster. Once, the glimmer of paparazzi lights thrilled him. It was proof he mattered. Now, it just reminded him of the parts of himself he could never hide. The world still saw the legend, the tailored suits, the art collections, the effortless charm. But inside the man, something had shifted. The very empire he built began to feel like a gilded cage, beautiful but suffocating. The applause still came. The cameras still flashed. But they no longer felt like praise. The flashes of the cameras began to feel more like traps than trophies. It started with whispers, the kind that spread faster than truth. One headline, then another. De Niro accused by former assistant. Hollywood legend faces lawsuit over verbal abuse. Overnight, admiration turned into suspicion. Every late-night host had a punchline. Every gossip site a theory. The man who once commanded screens now found his life dissected frame by frame. Judged not for his performances, but for his imperfections. Outside the courthouse, the air crackled with cameras. "Bob! Bob!" "Any comment?" reporters shouted as he pushed through the swarm. Behind the dark sunglasses, his jaw tightened. An actor used to control now caught in a script he didn't write. His lawyers called it exaggerated. The tabloids called it explosive. Twitter called it karma. Hard to believe the guy from Raging Bull could be this cruel, one tweet read, gaining 50,000 likes. Another countered, "He's 80 and still being hunted. Let the man live." The Sichi world split in two. Half defended the icon they grew up with. The other half demanded accountability. Inside the courtroom, the drama felt almost cinematic. The plaintiff's voice trembled as she described insults, chaos, exhaustion. De Niro sat motionless, his expression unreadable. A man built on restraint, now trapped by it. His lawyer objected, the judge sighed, the cameras clicked. It was performance art without applause, a scene too real for anyone's comfort. Then came the viral clip, a leaked recording, De Niro's voice sharp, frustrated, unmistakably angry. It spread across social media within minutes. The soundbite dissected like evidence of a fallen king. "That's not rage," one defender argued online. "That's a man tired of being used." But the damage was done. The legend had become the villain in his own movie. Friends tried to shield him. Scorsese released a quiet statement about loyalty and legacy. Old co-stars called it overblown. But in the court of public opinion, nuance doesn't trend. Every misstep was amplified. Every silence interpreted as guilt. The press conference that followed was meant to calm the storm. Instead, it fed it. Standing before flashing bulbs, De Niro's voice cracked between fury and fatigue. "You think you know me?" he said, eyes blazing. "You only know the roles." He stepped off stage before the final question, leaving reporters shouting after him as the doors slammed. That night, the headlines turned brutal. De Niro meltdown. Legend loses temper in public breakdown. Clips replayed on every screen. His raised voice, the glint of anger, the fall of a hero carved in real time. For decades, he had defined what strength looked like on film, quiet, controlled, untouchable. But in life, the cameras had no mercy. The man who once commanded stories now couldn't control. His own fans watched in disbelief. Critics smelled blood. The streets of New York, once his kingdom, felt colder now. Even the city lights seemed to dim. The weeks that followed felt endless. Court dates, statements, silence. Reporters camped outside his home. The same building once celebrated in glossy magazines, now circled by flashing lenses and hungry microphones. Every knock at the door sounded like judgment. Every notification on his phone was another blow. His world, once choreographed and commanding, had dissolved into chaos. Behind closed curtains, De Niro moved like a ghost. The calls from friends slowed. The offers stopped. His legendary discipline, the ritual mornings, the iron routine, crumbled under exhaustion. The man who once controlled every detail, of his craft could no longer control the headlines that defined him. When he looked into the mirror each morning, he whispered the same line to himself, "I don't even recognize this man anymore." There were lawsuits, numbers so large they felt unreal. Lawyers spoke in circles, their language polished but cold. Each document carried a new accusation, a new headline waiting to ignite. And yet, what cut deepest wasn't the money. It was the mockery, the late-night jokes, the smirking anchors, the strangers online who decided who he was without ever knowing him. One evening, he tried to walk the streets of Manhattan unnoticed, the city that had once raised him. But every glance felt sharp, every passerby a silent critic. He ducked into a small cafe on Bleecker Street, alone, and overheard two people whispering. "He used to be the best," one said. "Now he's just another scandal." He finished his coffee without tasting it, staring at the rain streaking down the window. Fame had turned to fog, even his family. Life began to unravel under the weight of exposure. Arguments bled into interviews. Private moments became public record. His children, once shielded from his fame, now carried its burden. The tabloids didn't just chase him, they chased them. The man who once played protectors and patriots now struggled to protect his own peace. Then came the night that broke whatever was left of his armor. It was supposed to be a quiet evening, a film festival tribute, honoring his lifetime of work. He arrived in a tailored suit, forced a smile, stepped into the lights. But one question from a reporter, cruel, pointed, meant to wound, snapped something inside him. He paused, the cameras rolled, his jaw set, and then, in a rare crack of temper, he fired back. The exchange went viral within minutes. De Niro explodes on the red carpet. The clip spread across continents before he even made it home. Memes, jokes, commentary. His legacy reduced to a soundbite. That night, sitting alone in his apartment, surrounded by trophies that now felt like relics, he whispered to the empty room, "Maybe this is how it ends." But fate wasn't finished with him yet, because the very next morning came the incident that shocked the entire world. The world had written him off. The critics had crowned his downfall complete. But Robert De Niro had never been one to fade quietly. Out of the silence, he began to move again, not with rage, but with purpose. Gone were the grand entrances, the red carpets, the entourage. What remained was a man stripped down to his essence, a storyteller who still had something left to say. His first step back came not from Hollywood, but from honesty. A live interview, raw, unfiltered, and unexpectedly vulnerable. The camera focused on the lines in his face, the tremor in his voice. "I've made mistakes," he said. "I've hurt people. But I've also been hurt, and I'm still here, trying to learn." It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. The clip spread like wildfire. Within hours, social media reversed its tide. "We Stand with De Niro" began trending worldwide. Fans posted clips from Taxi Driver and The Irishman, calling him the legend who never quits. Old co-stars spoke up, Pacino, Pesci, Streep, each sharing stories of the quiet discipline, the relentless work, the man behind the myth. It was as if the world suddenly remembered why it had loved him in the first place. Then came the performance that silenced doubt. A small independent film, no explosions, no awards campaign, just a story about aging, forgiveness, and second chances. De Niro's portrayal was fragile yet fierce, his pain now transparent on screen. When the film premiered at Tribeca, the audience rose before the credits even rolled. The applause was thunderous, not just for the role, but for the resurrection. Reporters called it the return of a giant. One critic wrote, "He's not trying to be the man he was. He's showing us the man he's become." For the first time in years, De Niro smiled without forcing it. He began walking the streets of New York. Again, head high, unguarded. Strangers stopped to shake his hand, not as fans, but as witnesses to survival. Even his interviews softened. "Fame," he said, "isn't power. It's permission to fail, to grow, to keep going." But beneath the glow of redemption, shadows still lingered. The world loves a comeback, but it also loves to watch one stumble. He knew that the spotlight forgives, but it never forgets. And as the cheers grew louder, one question began to echo beneath them all. Could this redemption really last? The comeback didn't just revive a career, it reignited a global conversation. Overnight, Robert De Niro's name became more than a headline. It became a debate, a symbol, a mirror held up to the modern world. The same internet that once tore him apart was now split in fascination. Talk shows dissected his every word. College essays analyzed his apology. Podcasts called it the redemption of the century. Clips of his raw interview played across TikTok, stitched beside scenes from his greatest films. Teenagers who weren't even born during his golden years posted tearful reactions. "He reminds me of my grandfather," one comment read. "Proud, broken, but still fighting." Another wrote, "He's proof that even legends fall. And that's what makes them human." The algorithm couldn't get enough. Across Hollywood, stars began weighing in. Some hailed his courage, others questioned the timing. "He built this system," one young actor tweeted. "Now he's trying to change it?" But for every cynic, there were dozens defending him. Meryl Streep called him a master, rediscovering his soul. Leonardo DiCaprio described his return as what real artistry looks like. Even Scorsese, famously private, broke his silence. "Bob's never played a perfect man," he said in an interview. That's what makes his story matter. He's real. News outlets turned his revival into a cultural autopsy. The Atlantic ran a feature titled De Niro and the Death of Cancel Culture. Rolling Stone published Why We Can't Stop Forgiving Our Icons. Meanwhile, social media split into digital tribes. Team Forgive versus Team Forget. Hashtags collided. We Stand With De Niro met Artsar's Accountability Matters. Every opinion felt personal. Every argument a reflection of something larger than one man. In the streets, murals of his face began appearing, one in Rome, another in New York's Lower East Side. The image was always the same, an aging De Niro staring past the viewer, half defiance, half regret. Fans left flowers beneath them as if honoring both the artist and the cautionary tale late-night hosts, once mocking him, now turned reflective. "We all watched him rise, fall, and rise again," one said. Maybe we weren't laughing at him, we were laughing at ourselves. The audience applauded, not out of fandom, but recognition. The story had outgrown celebrity. It had become a study in forgiveness, ego, and survival in the age of constant exposure. Documentaries followed, think pieces bloomed, reaction videos multiplied. For months, the conversation refused to die. And in the center of it all, De Niro stayed quiet, filming, rebuilding, living. His silence became the final act of wisdom in a world addicted to noise. Because in the end, it wasn't just about Robert De Niro anymore. It was about everyone watching, about how quickly we crown, how easily we destroy, and how desperately we hope for redemption. What started as one scandal had now become a cultural mirror. The noise faded long before the cameras did. Awards, interviews, red carpets, they still came. But Robert De Niro no longer chased them. At 82, his voice had softened, his movements slower, but there was something new in his eyes. Peace. The same man who once roared through film sets and fought the world now spent his mornings walking through Central Park, unnoticed, unbothered, unmasked. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. The scandals, the victories, the decades of worship and war, they all became chapters in a single story about endurance. When asked in one of his last interviews what he'd learned, he paused for a long moment, smiled faintly, and said, "Fame can make you rich, but only humility keeps you human." He talked about the people he hurt, the bridges he rebuilt, the mistakes that taught him mercy. He admitted there were nights he'd lie awake wondering if he'd become the very kind of man he once despised. "But you learn," he said softly, "you learn that being right isn't the same as being good." The audience was silent. For once, there were no applause lines, just the stillness of shared truth. Sometimes, he'd visit the old neighborhoods where it all began. The corner store, the cracked sidewalks, the tiny apartment window where a young dreamer once stared out, believing the world would notice him someday. It did, and it nearly broke him. But somehow, he had found his way back to that boy, the one who dreamed not of fame, but of meaning. On a quiet evening, he was spotted at the edge of the Hudson, watching the sun sink over the skyline. No entourage, no flashing lights, just an old man in a worn coat, breathing in the city that made him and almost unmade him, for millions who had followed his journey. That image said everything words couldn't. It wasn't about the movies, or the money, or even the scandal. It was about surviving yourself, about losing everything that doesn't matter, and finding what does. Because in the end, the spotlight fades, but the human story remains. He fought his demons under the spotlight, and this time, he won. From the streets of New York to the golden halls of Hollywood, Robert De Niro's journey wasn't just a career. It was a lifetime of reinvention. Every scandal, every heartbreak, every moment of rage or regret carved him into something deeper, a reminder that even legends bleed, and even icons must face the mirror as the music swells and the camera lingers. On that final image, an old man walking toward the horizon, shadows behind him. Peace ahead, we're left to ask ourselves, what does it truly mean to live a life worth remembering? Is it fame or forgiveness? Power or purpose? Now it's your turn. What shocked you most about his story? The wealth, the betrayal, the comeback? Drop your thoughts below, because this isn't just De Niro's story. It's a reflection of us all, of how easily we build our heroes up and how quickly we tear them down. If you felt something while watching, hit subscribe, share this video, and stay tuned. Because if you thought this was dramatic, wait till you hear what really happened to next celebrity's name, a tale of fame, love, and the price of chasing immortality. Until then, remember, behind every spotlight is a shadow, and behind every legend, a human being still learning how to live.